His striking blue eyes burned too bright. Not with triumph, not with amusement, with something darker, something broken. Sienna swallowed hard. "You've seen it too." Azuron said nothing, because they both knew the answer. He had seen it long before. Her. That was why he had taken her, why he would never let her go. Sienna's pulse slammed. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. She should have felt angry, should have felt betrayed. Instead, all she felt was terror. Because this wasn't just fate. This was a curse, and she was already trapped in it. Azuron's grip tightened. Not painful, but like he could feel her slipping away, like he could feel the war inside her. His lips parted. His voice was quiet, almost pleading. "Don't fight it." Sienna's throat burned, because a part of her, a terrible, twisted part, wanted to listen, but she couldn't. Not yet. Not when she still had a choice. Didn't she? She forced herself to speak. "And if I do?" Azuron exhaled, slow. His hands drifted up, his fingers brushing against the bare skin of her throat, where the necklace should have been, where it once was. His jaw clenched, and when he spoke, his voice was a promise. A warning. "Then you will be mine, Sienna. In every way." Sienna's breath caught, because the way he said it, it wasn't just about the prophecy, it wasn't just about fate. It was about him, and the way he had wanted her long before the veil had ever whispered her name. A fate worse than death. Or maybe, the only thing keeping them both alive. Chapter 22. The truth beneath the temple walls whispered, not with voices, but with shadows. Sienna felt them before she saw them, curling against her skin like ghostly fingers, pressing into her bones. She didn't want to go deeper, didn't want to step onto the path Azuron was leading her down, but she had no choice. His grip on her wrist was unyielding, not painful, not forceful, but firm, like he wasn't just holding her. He was claiming her, binding her, forever. Sienna's pulse slammed as they descended further, the air growing heavier. Her breath hitched. "What is this place?" Azuron's voice was low, cold. "The heart of the veil." The moment he said it, she felt it, the power. Dark, consuming. It seeped from the walls, from the very stones beneath them, like a pulse throbbing beneath the surface of the world. And then, the whispers grew louder. Sienna shuddered. She swore. She could hear her own voice, crying, screaming, begging. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. She turned to Azuron, but his gaze was fixed ahead, striking blue eyes burning. He wasn't unaffected, but he wasn't afraid, because this place belonged to him. Or maybe he belonged to it. A chill crawled up her spine. She couldn't do this, couldn't let him pull her deeper into the darkness. Sienna wrenched her hand free, stepping back. I don't want to be here." Azuron finally looked at her, expression unreadable. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer, but then his lips parted. "You have to see." The torches flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed them whole, and suddenly, she wasn't in the temple anymore. She was in a vision. The veil had taken her, and it was about to show her the truth. The scent of blood. Ash. Sienna stood at the top of a crumbling tower, the wind screaming around her. Below, a battlefield. Azuron was there, fighting, bleeding. His striking blue eyes were wild. But something was wrong. His body twisted, shadows curling beneath his skin. The veil was consuming him. And she was too late. Sienna's breath came in shallow gasps as she turned, only to see herself, standing at the altar, dressed in black, a sacrificial bride. Azuron reached for her, pleading, desperate. But as soon as their hands touched, she burned. Fire engulfed her, consuming her flesh, her soul. Azuron roared, grabbing her, trying to save her. But it was no use. She was fading, becoming part of the veil, and he was breaking. The last thing she saw was his face, pure agony. Then, nothing. Sienna screamed, the vision shattered, the temple rushing back around her. She staggered back, gasping, trembling. No, it wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Her eyes flew to Azuron, her body still shaking. What did you do? His jaw was tight. I showed you what's to come. Sienna couldn't breathe. Everything inside her screamed to deny it, to run. So she did. She ran. Her feet slammed against the stone, her pulse wild. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know if there even was a way out. She just knew she had to get away. Away from him. From the prophecy. From the future she refused to believe. But then, a voice. Low, dark, echoing through the temple like a shadow crawling down her spine. Run, hide, but you cannot deny your destiny. Sienna's breath caught. The sound of his footsteps. Slow, calculated, hunting her. She stumbled into a narrow passage, pressing herself against the cold stone, trying to quiet her breathing. Maybe he wouldn't find her. Maybe she could escape. Maybe a hand wrapped around her throat. Sienna gasped, not tight, not cruel, but commanding. Azuron leaned in, his breath warm against her cheek. I told you, little one. His voice was velvet and steel. When I find you, you won't like the consequences. Sienna trembled, because she knew this was only the beginning. The sleeping arrangement. The moment Azuron dragged her back into his chambers, Sienna knew escape was impossible. Not just from the locked doors, not just from his unyielding grip, but from him, from the way his presence consumed the room, from the way his striking. Blue gaze pinned her down, making it impossible to breathe. You will sleep here. Sienna's fingers curled into fists. You can't. Azuron tilted his head. A silent challenge. He was daring her to argue. Her mouth opened, but she had no fight left. Not after everything she had seen. Not after the prophecy. Not after the terrifying truth that she wasn't just some captive. She was bound to him. Sienna swallowed hard. Fine. She wouldn't beg. Wouldn't let him see how much this rattled her. She could endure one night. But as soon as she saw the bed, her stomach dropped. Too small. Her eyes flicked back to Azuron. There's only one bed. He gave her a slow, deliberate look. And you will sleep in it. She let out a sharp breath. I can sleep on the floor. No, she glared. Then I'll take the chair. Azuron moved, so fast she barely saw him. One moment, he was by the door. The next, he was behind her, too close. His breath brushed her ear. You will sleep here. His fingers traced the necklace at her throat, the same one he had forced upon her the night of their wedding. The cold metal sent a shiver down her spine. You weren't wearing this earlier. His voice was dangerously soft. Sienna stiffened. He had noticed. Of course he had. I took it off. Azuron went very still. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't speak. But then, his fingers wrapped around the pendant, pressing it flush against her skin. His voice dropped to a near growl. "You will not take it off again." Her throat tightened. She should fight. She should refuse. But her body, her treacherous body, wouldn't move, wouldn't push him away, wouldn't do anything except stand there, heart slamming, as his fingers lingered against her skin for a second, too long, and then he pulled away, stepping back, letting her breathe. "I will not touch you," he said. "Unless you ask." Sienna's cheeks burned. "That will never happen." Azuron smirked. "Then you have nothing to fear." But his voice, it was a promise. A challenge, one she wasn't sure she could win. The night, accidental skin to skin. Contact she tried to sleep. She really did. But Azuron was right there, his body too large for the narrow bed. His warmth seeping into the space between them. His breathing too steady, too calm, like she wasn't affecting him at all. Like he could ignore the way their bodies were one wrong move away from touching. Sienna squeezed her eyes shut. If she just stayed still. But then, she shifted, and the moment her bare leg brushed his thigh, Azuron went rigid. Sienna froze. She hadn't meant to. But now she was hyper-aware of the heat of his skin, of the solid muscle beneath her knee. He didn't move, didn't say anything, but she could feel it, the tension coiling between them, the slow, controlled way he exhaled, like he was gritting his teeth, like he was trying not to react. Sienna's heart pounded. He was awake. She knew he was awake. So, recklessly, she moved again, just slightly. Her fingertips brushed his forearm, testing, just to see. His hand caught her wrist. Heat shot up her arm. Sienna sucked in a breath, eyes flying open. Azuron was staring at her, his striking blue eyes dark, intense. "Careful, little queen," he murmured. His voice was dangerously low. "I don't think you're ready for what happens if you touch me like that." Sienna swallowed. She should pull away, should break the tension, but neither of them moved. The moment stretched, thick with heat, with promise. And Sienna realized she wasn't so sure she was ready to stop. The escape, and the whispers in. The jungle Sienna sat frozen, her pulse a frantic drumbeat in her ears. Azuron's grip had burned into her skin, his voice like a dark promise still curling around her thoughts. But then, he let go, and without a word, he stood up and left. The chamber door shut behind him with a heavy, echoing thud. She stared at the empty space he had just occupied, stunned. What just happened? He had looked at her like he was on the edge of something dangerous, like he was about to break. And then, he left. Sienna exhaled, trying to calm the fire in her veins. It didn't matter. She had a chance. She could still run. This was the first time he had left her alone. She wouldn't waste it. Her heartbeat roared in her ears as she swung her legs off the bed, her bare feet hitting the cold stone floor. No guards, no locks on the chamber doors. It was almost as if he wanted her to leave. She shook the thought away. Sienna darted to the entrance, pushing the heavy door open just enough to slip through. The corridors were empty, flickering with torchlight, casting eerie shadows along the walls. She moved swiftly, silent as a ghost. Each turn took her deeper into the unknown. Twisting halls, endless stone. Her breath came in quick gasps as she finally saw an opening, a narrow passage leading out of the fortress. Her heart slammed. She ran. The cold night air hit her like a slap as she stumbled into the open jungle beyond. The trees loomed, tall and unforgiving. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. But she didn't stop. She ran, faster, bare feet slapping against the earth. Branches tore at her skin, but she didn't care. She had to get away, far away from him, from the prophecy, from whatever madness he had dragged her into. Her breath was ragged, her lungs burning. But then, she heard them, the whispers, low, sinister, curling through the air like smoke. She froze. Her eyes darted around the darkness. There was nothing, only the jungle, only the shadows. But the voices, they were everywhere. Soft, echoing, calling to her. Sienna. Her blood turned to ice. She spun around, her heart hammering. "Who's there?" she whispered. No answer. Only the wind, only the whispers. Something cold wrapped around her spine. A presence. Something watching. The shadows shifted, and in the darkness she felt it. Something waiting. Waiting for her. For the blood of the moon. For the girl who thought she could run. And far behind her, unseen but never truly gone, Azuron watched, a slow, knowing smirk on his lips. Because she would return. They always did. Chapter: The Warlord's Captive. Sienna's desperate escape. Sienna ran blindly through the jungle, her breath ragged, her limbs trembling. The whispers were everywhere, curling around her like unseen hands, clawing at her mind, mocking her. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't care. All she knew was she had to escape. The branches tore at her dress, scratching her skin, as she stumbled over the roots, her feet bare and aching against the harsh ground, her vision blurred with panic. "Get away," she gasped, her voice a breathless plea against the unseen forces that whispered her name. And then, she crashed into something, no, someone, a wall of muscle, hard, immovable. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs as strong hands seized her. Sienna screamed, thrashing, but it was useless. More hands grabbed her, rough and merciless, yanking her arms behind her back. "Look at this," a voice sneered, thick with amusement. The Ashen King's little prize running all alone. Her stomach plunged. Not Azuron's men, enemies. Panic surged as someone yanked at her hair, forcing her head back. "Let me go," she snarled, kicking wildly. Laughter dark, cruel. "You hear that?" Another man chuckled. "She's got fire. She won't for long." A blindfold slammed over her eyes. Darkness swallowed her. Her wrists were bound, the ropes biting into her skin. She struggled, but the more she fought, the tighter they pulled. "Try all you want, princess." The first man growled in her ear. "You're ours now." No, 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 no. They lifted her, like she was nothing. Sienna kicked, screamed, but it was useless. The jungle swallowed them whole. The warlord's captive time lost meaning. All she knew was pain. The ropes dug into her wrists, her skin rubbed raw against the rough material. They carried her for what felt like hours, tossing her between them when she resisted, jostling her like she was nothing more than a prize of war. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and sweat. Occasionally, she felt a hand stroke along her cheek, testing her. She jerked away every time, her stomach rolling with disgust. She didn't know what they wanted. Maybe they would ransom her. Maybe they would kill her. Or maybe... Her stomach clenched. Maybe they'd use her. Her breath came in shallow, panicked gasps. She bit the inside of her cheek, fighting the helpless terror creeping in. Azuron. The thought hit her like a blade to the chest. He had let her go. Had he even noticed she was gone? Would he even care? A sick, twisted part of her hoped, prayed that he would come for her, that he would save her, even after everything, even after she had run. The thought made her sick, but she couldn't stop it. she clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay strong. She wouldn't break. She wouldn't. But when they finally stopped and the sound of heavy iron gates groaned open, her heart dropped. The air was different. Colder. Damp. The scent of blood and sweat choked her. A dungeon. The bois. Men dragged her down the stone steps, her feet bare against the ice-cold floor. They shoved her forward. She stumbled, and then hit the ground, hard. She gasped as pain jolted up her knees, her bound hands useless to break her fall. The blindfold was ripped away. She blinked. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of torches flickering against damp stone walls. She was alone. The men stood just outside the bars, smirking. "Maybe we should enjoy her before the boss decides," one of them murmured. Sienna's breath caught. "No, no, no, no," a cold, cruel chuckle. "Relax, princess," another sneered. "For now, you'll sit here. But when the warlord arrives, we'll see what he wants to do with you." She said nothing, did nothing, but inside, she was screaming. The door slammed, shut. The lock clicked, and Sienna was left alone in the dark, trapped. Azuron's rage. Azuron sat in his war room, staring at nothing. His fingers clenched the edges of the table, his breathing slow, too controlled. But inside, he was burning. She was gone. Not just gone, taken, and worse. He couldn't find her. The necklace, the one thing that should have bound her to him, was useless. A void. A black hole where she should be. His chest tightened, his rage, his fear coiled, like a monster inside him. His men stood silent, watching him, waiting for his command. They had never seen their warlord like this before. Not so still, not so deadly. Azuron slowly, carefully, exhaled. Then he stood. "We ride," he said, his voice like thunder. The ground seemed to shake beneath them. "We burn every kingdom if we must. We take down every warlord. We leave no stone unturned." His striking blue eyes burned like molten fire. "Whoever took her will suffer. And when I find her," his jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists. A single thought consumed him. If anyone had touched her, he would rip their kingdom apart with his bare hands. Sienna's Hope Sienna curled against the cold stone wall, breathing shallowly. Her wrists ached from the bindings. Her body shook from exhaustion. But her mind was on him. Azuron. He was the last person she should want to see, the last person she should hope for. But as the darkness stretched, and fear crept into her bones, she found herself whispering into the night, a prayer, a plea, "Come for me." And somewhere, far beyond the walls of her prison, Azuron heard her. Chapter: The Ashen King's Wrath. Azuron's Hunt. The jungle was silent, too silent. Not even the insects dared to sing in the presence of death. Azuron rode at the head of his army, his striking, blue eyes burning in the dim torchlight. The trees loomed around them, shadows slithering between the twisted branches, but nothing mattered except the path ahead. Find her. Find her. The words pulsed through his skull like a war drum. The muscles in his jaw tightened, the reins of his horse biting into his hands. His fingers twitched, desperate to be wrapped around the throat of the warlord who had dared take what was his. His shoulders ached, tense from nights without sleep. For 3 days, he had hunted. For 3 days, he had torn through villages, interrogated warlords, sent threats that made entire kingdoms tremble. And now he was close. Too close. Azuron could feel it, like the heat before a storm. The whispers of the veil crept at the edges of his mind, tempting him to call upon the darkness, to rip through the fabric of the spirit world and see her. But he wouldn't. Not yet. Not when he knew the cost. The veil was already killing him, turning his soul into ash, piece by piece, and yet, if she was hurt, if she was suffering, he would burn himself alive to get to her. He pushed his horse faster, the jungle floor thundering beneath him. His soldiers followed, silent and deadly, their armor catching the flicker of torchlight as they rode through the shadows. Azuron barely noticed them. His mind was already ahead, at the warlord's stronghold, where she was. Alone. Scared. His hands shook against the reins. He exhaled sharply. He had to be careful. If he let himself fall too deep into the rage, he would slaughter everyone before he even found her. And he needed her alive. Safe. That was all that mattered. Sienna's despair. Sienna sat curled against the cold stone wall, her knees tucked to her chest, her arms wrapped around herself for what little comfort she could find. The dungeon smelled of damp rot and decay, the air thick with the scent of old blood and filth. She had lost track of time. Was it day? Night? It didn't matter. Her wrists ached from the rough ropes. The skin rubbed raw where the bindings had dug in. Her throat burned from thirst, her lips cracked and dry. But worse than the hunger, worse than the pain, was the fear. The whispers still curled at the edges of her mind, twisting through the darkness like smoke. The veil. It had been haunting her since the moment she stepped into Azuron's temple. Now, in the silence of the dungeon, it was louder. It slithered through her thoughts, filling her with things she didn't want to believe. You never should have left him. You are bound to him. He is coming for you. Her hands trembled, her heart pounded. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to force the voices away. But they weren't lying. A part of her knew it. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and confusion, she wanted him to come. The thought made her sick. She shouldn't want this. She shouldn't want him. But he was all she had left. And maybe, just maybe, the prophecy was true. Maybe she had been his all along. Azuron's wrath. The warlord's fortress loomed in the distance, its black stone walls rising against the night sky like the ribs of a beast. Azuron's horse snorted, sensing the tension rolling off him in waves. The ground beneath him felt like it was cracking, the weight of his rage pressing against the very air. He dismounted in one smooth motion, his cloak billowing as he stalked forward. His men followed, silent, waiting. He didn't slow, didn't hesitate. He had warned them. Give her back or suffer. They had chosen to suffer. Fine. Azuron raised his hand. The flames of the torches flickered, and then they erupted. The fortress lit up in an instant, fire racing along the stone like veins of molten gold. Screams echoed from within. Azuron didn't flinch. He strode through the flames, his sword drawn, his soldiers crashing through the gates behind him. The battle had begun, and he would not leave without her. Chapter: The Wrath of the Ashen King. The battle begins. Azuron did not hesitate. The moment his army stormed the gates, death followed. Steel clashed against steel. The scent of blood and fire thickened the air, a toxic perfume of war. His soldiers moved like shadows, cutting through the enemy ranks with ruthless efficiency, but Azuron barely saw them. His mind was on her, Sienna. Somewhere in this damned fortress, she was alone, surrounded by enemies who had dared lay their filthy hands on what belonged to him. He ripped through the battlefield like a storm, his sword an extension of his wrath. One warrior lunged. Azuron dodged, twisting behind him with deadly grace before plunging his blade into the man's spine. Another charged. Azuron grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with ease before snapping his neck like a brittle twig. His enemies screamed, but he barely heard them. Where was she? His boots pounded against the blood-soaked stone as he surged forward, his striking blue eyes scanning every corridor, every doorway. Then, a whisper. Not from a soldier, not from a dying enemy, from the veil. It called to him, a murmur slithering. Through his mind, he felt her. Not just her presence, her fear. The dungeons. Azuron took the stairs 2 at a time, ignoring the clash of metal and the screams behind him. The cold air of the dungeon wrapped around him, but he didn't slow. Torches flickered as he moved, his shadow stretching across the damp stone walls. A cell door loomed ahead. He kicked it open. Empty. Another door. Empty. Another. Damn it. He growled, the sound low and lethal. Where was she? His chest rose and fell in heavy breaths, his patience unraveling. He would tear this entire kingdom apart to find her. Then, a sound, a voice, not hers. From above, the courtroom. Azuron turned, his heart pounding as he ran. The courtroom, a king's worst nightmare. The doors burst open. And there she was, in the arms of another man, a blade at her throat. Azuron's vision blurred with rage. His hands shook, his breath caught in his chest. The warlord held Sienna against him, his grip tight, his body swaying from too much wine. His drunken laughter rang through the courtroom like nails scraping against stone. Azuron didn't move. Not yet. One wrong move, one misstep, and the warlord could slit her throat. But then, Azuron saw it. The necklace, still on her, the one he had given her. He exhaled sharply, his pulse slowing just for a moment. She had kept it. She had wanted him to find her. Something inside him eased, just for a second. But then, his gaze swept lower. The red gown. Rage returned like a tidal wave. Why was she wearing that? His stomach, twisted, and then, the scars. His blood ran cold, her delicate skin marred by bruises and fresh cuts. Had this bastard touched her? His fingers twitched toward his sword, his jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. But he didn't move. Not yet. The warlord grinned, pressing the knife harder against Sienna's throat. Leave, the man slurred. This girl is not yours to take. Azuron didn't answer. His silence was a promise of death. The warlord sneered. You think you can keep her? Fool, her blood, her very existence will be your downfall. Sienna flinched. Azuron's eyes flicked to her. She was confused. She didn't understand. She didn't know what this man was talking about. The warlord's laughter turned to a snarl. If she lives, the world will burn. The kingdoms will collapse. And you, his bloodshot eyes narrowed, you will be the first to fall. Her magic will consume you, destroy you. Azuron's breath was steady, his face unmoving. But inside, he was raging. No one would take her from him. The warlord tightened, his grip on Sienna. She must die. That was when she looked at him. The smallest flicker of movement, a look. Subtle, desperate. She was telling him something. She was about to run. His muscles tensed. No. He gave her a small, sharp shake of his head. Not yet. But she had already made up her mind. The warlord was too drunk to react fast enough when Sienna shoved against him, twisting out of his hold. The knife slashed. A thin line of red bloomed on her shoulder. Azuron's stomach dropped. She staggered, but she kept running, straight to him. The moment she crashed into his chest, his arms locked around her. She was real. She was alive. And she was his. Sienna sobbed into his armor, her body trembling violently against him. His hand pressed against the back of her head, shielding her, his body curling around hers like a protective cage. His heartbeat slammed against his ribs. He could feel every broken part of her. She wasn't just crying. She was breaking apart in his arms, and he would kill for her. Behind him, his soldiers grabbed the warlord, forcing him to his knees. But Azuron didn't look at him. Not yet. Right now, Sienna was all that mattered. When they finally become one, the ruins of fire and shadow. The castle burned around them. Flames curled up the walls, casting flickering gold and crimson light across the wreckage. Smoke coiled through the shattered pillars, the air thick with the scent of blood, sweat, and war. But Azuron barely noticed, because she was in his arms. Sienna was shaking. Her body, fragile yet unbroken, pressed into him, her breath uneven against his chest. Azuron held her tight, his arms wrapped around her like a shield, as if his hold alone could erase everything she had been through, as if he could keep her, safe just by keeping her close. But she wasn't okay. Her fingers clung to his tunic, her nails digging into the fabric. Her body was stiff, her face hidden against him, but he could feel the tremors racking through her. And then, she sobbed. A raw, broken sound. Something inside Azuron snapped. He gritted his teeth, his fingers threading into her tangled hair. Sienna, she wouldn't lift her head, wouldn't speak. His pulse pounded. Rage, sorrow, something deeper all swirling inside him like a storm. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands cupping her face, tear-streaked, ash-smudged, and her gown. His eyes darkened. "Why are you wearing this?" His voice was hoarse, but his grip was firm. "Who gave it to you?" Sienna's breath hitched, her lips parting, but she said nothing. Azuron's jaw clenched. His fingers traced the bruises on her arms, the faint scars across her collarbone. His hands trembled as he touched the torn fabric of the gown, red, flowing, elegant. But it wasn't hers. It had been given to her. By them. His fury burned brighter than the flames consuming the castle. "Did they touch you?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but each word cut like steel. "Did they do anything to you?" Sienna, tensed. She didn't answer, didn't deny it. Silence stretched between them, a moment too long. Azuron's world blurred with bloodlust. His fingers curled tighter around her waist, his breath ragged. "Tell me." Sienna swallowed hard, her lips trembling. Then, she surged forward and kissed him. Azuron's breath caught. Her lips were desperate, pressing against his like she was drowning, like she was trying to steal his breath, to steal his pain. For a second, he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, his hands tightened around her. A muffled sound escaped her as he kissed her back, harder, deeper, his fingers tangling in her hair, pulling her closer, closer. Then, he pulled away. Azuron's fingers slowly trailed down her throat, lingering at the hollow of her collarbone before slipping lower. He ghosted his touch over the scars, littering her skin, his jaw tightening with something dark, something lethal. "Who did this to you?" he asked again. His voice was like a blade, sharp and dangerous. Sienna shook her head, not wanting to break this moment. But Azuron wasn't having it. He gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. His eyes were pure fire. "Tell me." His breath was hot against her lips. "Tell me who I have to kill." Sienna's breath caught. She shouldn't want this. Shouldn't want him. But gods, she did. So instead of answering, She kissed him again. This time, she was the one who devoured him. Sharp, sudden. His striking blue eyes searched hers, his breath unsteady. "Sienna." His voice was rough, torn, between need and restraint. Her lips were swollen, her eyes glassy with emotion. He exhaled shakily, his thumb grazing along her jaw. "Are you sure you want this? You are so tired?" Sienna didn't hesitate. "I want you. Ruxar Hashemi." Azuron's throat worked, something unreadable flickering across his expression. Then, he exhaled a low, broken laugh, pressing his forehead to hers. "Oh, Sienna," he whispered. "You have no idea how long I've waited. For this." The soldiers shifted, realizing what was unfolding before them. A glance, a knowing silence. Then, one by one, they slipped away, leaving the two of them alone, within the burning castle walls. Azuron tilted her chin up, capturing her lips in a slow, claiming kiss. Sienna melted into him, and as the fire roared around them, they burned together. Azuron's voice was like a storm rolling in, dark and heavy with promise. Sienna shivered, not from fear, but from the unbearable tension wrapping around her, pulling her deeper into the fire. She had spent so many nights hating him, so many nights trying to fight this. But not tonight. Tonight, she wanted to lose herself. In him. Her fingers curled into his tunic, pulling him down, demanding more. And gods, he gave it to her. Azuron lifted her effortlessly, his strength raw and undeniable. He placed her on the edge of the grand wooden table at the center of the ruined throne room, the heat from the still-burning embers casting striking blue shadows across his face. His lips crashed against hers again, but this time, it was different. Slower. Darker. His hands skimmed down her arms, then lower, pressing possessively into her hips. He dragged her closer. His fingers traced the curve of her waist, slipping beneath the loose fabric of her dress. He moved with aching slowness, as if memorizing the feel of her, as if he had all the time in the world. And for once, she didn't fight it. She wanted it. She wanted him. Azuron exhaled sharply, his control hanging by a thread. "Look at you," he rasped, his thumb trailing along the curve of her bottom lip. His voice was low, nearly unhinged. "You have no idea what you do to me." Sienna swallowed hard, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to reply, wanted to speak, but the way he was looking at her, like he was starving, stole every word from her lips. His breath was warm against her skin, sending shivers through her, making her toes curl. Sienna reached up, her fingers brushing against his chest, feeling the solid, unyielding muscle beneath his tunic. She pulled him closer, finally closing the distance between them. Her lips met his with a fervor she hadn't even known she had. Azuron's breath hitched in surprise, but it didn't take long for him to match her intensity. His hands moved to her waist, pulling her against him, hard. The pressure of his body against hers was like nothing she'd felt before. Raw, consuming, and relentless. Every inch of her skin burned with need, and it wasn't long before her body responded in kind. Her hands slid beneath his tunic, feeling the warmth of his skin, the strength in his muscles. Azuron let out a soft groan as she touched him, his hands moving to her back, pulling her even closer, until there was no space between them at all. The air between them felt suffocating, and yet Sienna couldn't get enough of it. Every kiss, every touch, every moment sent a surge of heat through her body. Her fingers tangled in his hair as she deepened the kiss, tilting her head to press her lips more firmly against his. Azuron's grip on her tightened, his control slipping away. His eyes met hers again, a challenge, a question. He wanted to see if she was ready for the next step. And she was. Without breaking their kiss, Sienna pulled at the fabric of his tunic, desperate to feel all of him. The fabric tore with a single tug, and Azuron let out a low laugh, deep and rich, full of satisfaction. His hands moved to her robe, untying the loose knots with quick, practiced fingers. Her breath was ragged now, her pulse racing. But it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the heat between them, the fire that had been smoldering for far too long. When the robe finally fell to the floor, Azuron paused again, his gaze sweeping over her, and for a moment, there was no command in his eyes, only awe. "You're breathtaking," he murmured, his voice thick with desire. Sienna's cheeks flushed under his gaze, but she didn't look away. Instead, her body pressed against his, the soft curves of her form fitting perfectly against his hardness. Azuron's hands roamed to her back, his touch soft but firm, as though he were memorizing every inch of her. Slowly, he guided her down onto the bed, his body following her, pushing her to the edge. Every inch of him felt like fire against her skin. Their bodies moved together with urgency, but also with a depth that couldn't be ignored. Every kiss, every touch, every breath felt like it mattered. When he finally entered her, the world seemed to stop. Sienna's gasp was swallowed by his kiss as they moved together, their rhythm slow at first, building, until it became something frantic, desperate, both of them lost in the overwhelming sensations. Azuron's hands were everywhere, cupping, caressing, guiding her, showing her that this was more than just about the moment. It was about claiming what was his. Sienna's nails dug into his back, her breath ragged, urging him on, but he held her gently, precisely, letting her take the lead when she needed, pulling her closer when she began to falter. The heat between them was all-consuming, wrapping around them until they couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Sienna's heart beat in time with his, each of them lost in a whirlwind of need, pleasure, and something far deeper than either had expected. In that moment, they were not captor and captive. They were one. The ride back. His mind in ruins. The wind howled through the trees as Azuron rode through the darkness, his warhorse cutting through the jungle like a phantom. Sienna slept against his chest. She shouldn't have been able to. Not after what she had been through. Not after the horror of being taken. But exhaustion had finally stolen her away, and now, she was limp in his arms, her breath slow and even against the bare skin of his throat. Azuron held her tighter. The smell of smoke still clung to her hair. The fabric of her tattered red gown was rough against his hands, ripped in places where she had fought back. Fought to survive. And gods, the bruises. They weren't fresh. Some had already faded into an ugly yellow. Others were still dark. Still raw. His grip on the reins turned deadly. She had been with them for days. Days. He didn't know what they had done to her. Didn't know if she had been beaten. If she had been starved. If they had dared. Azuron clenched his jaw, forcing back the rage that clawed at his throat. If that warlord had touched her, his free hand twitched, instinctively moving toward the hilt of his blade. He would cut off the hand that touched her, burn his flesh from bone, tear him apart slowly, and he would make Sienna watch. Not because he wanted to punish her, no, but because she needed to see. She needed to understand that she belonged to him. Azuron exhaled sharply, shifting Sienna in his hold. She stirred slightly, murmuring something in her sleep. A small broken sound. His stomach turned to stone. What had she endured? What nightmares haunted her now? His fingers brushed her cheek, tracing the delicate line of her jaw. Blackened under eyes, sunken cheeks. She looked exhausted. He had never seen her this way before, never seen her fragile. And the worst part? He had failed her. She had run from him. And this was what happened. The prophecy had been right. She was his. And now, he would never let her go again. The warlord was still alive, for now. Azuron had dragged him from the ruins of his burning kingdom, had bound him in chains, and when they returned to Azuron's stronghold, Sienna would watch him suffer, because that warlord had tried to take what was his, and Azuron would make sure he never tried again. The arrival, a kingdom in ruins, a woman in his arms. The iron gates of Azuron's fortress loomed ahead, bathed in the golden light of torches. His men stood at attention, their faces grim as they watched their warlord ride through the entrance, his prized possession cradled against him. Sienna was still asleep. Her weight against his chest felt both fragile and grounding, like she might vanish if he let go. Azuron slid off his warhorse, holding her close. His arms curled around her, one under her legs, the other at her back, keeping her against him as if she were made of glass. He didn't want to wake her. Not yet. Not when she had finally found rest. But the moment his boots hit the stone ground, his warriors kneeled. "Warlord, we have prepared the prisoner." Azuron's grip on Sienna tightened. Slowly, his gaze lifted, landing on the man who had dared take her. The prisoner, bloodied and broken, the warlord was on his knees, bound in thick, rusted chains. His face was a ruin of bruises and cuts. His dark hair, once groomed, was matted with sweat and blood. He was filth beneath Azuron's boots, and yet, his lips curled into a sickening grin. "Did she tell you?" the warlord rasped. His voice was hoarse, thick with blood. "Did she tell you what happened?" Azuron stilled. A sharp, icy tendril of dread slithered through his chest. Sienna shifted in his arms. She was waking. The warlord's black eyes flicked to her. She begged. The world turned red. Azuron's wrath. A death sentence Azuron, moved before he could think. One step, two. A hand clenched around the warlord's throat. The chains rattled as the man gasped, his grin faltering. "Finish your sentence." Azuron's voice was low, calm, deadly. "I dare you," the warlord choked. Azuron squeezed tighter, his palm itching to crush the man's windpipe. He didn't care if the words were lies, didn't care if they were meant to provoke him. The mere thought of Sienna pleading, whether for mercy, for escape, or for her own life. Unforgivable. "Azuron," Sienna whispered. His breath caught. She was awake. Slowly, his grip loosened. He turned, meeting her gaze, dazed, exhausted and yet afraid. Not of the warlord, not of the blood. Of him. Azuron exhaled sharply, dropping the warlord like a piece of discarded waste. He would not do this now, not in front of her, not while she still looked at him like he was a monster. The decision. A public execution. Azuron held her closer, tucking her against his chest. Then, he turned to his men. "Chain him to the pyre," he commanded. His voice was steel, his expression unreadable. "At dawn, she will watch him burn." And, with that, he carried her inside. Azuron kicked open the heavy wooden doors of his chambers, carrying Sienna inside like a battle-won prize. The firelight flickered across the stone walls, casting shadows over the ruined queen in his arms. Her gown was torn, the once delicate red fabric darkened with blood, some of it hers, some of it not. She was shaking, whether from exhaustion, fear, or something else he couldn't tell, but he felt it. The pull, the prophecy's noose tightening around his throat. He had her, and she was his. Azuron set her down on her feet, but the moment he let go, her knees nearly buckled. A curse left his lips as he caught her again, his strong hands gripping her waist. "You need to bathe." His voice was low, rough. She stiffened. "I can do it myself." Azuron let out a dark chuckle, stepping back and folding his arms. "With me watching." Sienna's breath hitched. Her lips parted, but she refused to look away. "No." His smirk deepened. "I've seen you before, Princess. But if you want me to close my eyes, beg." Sienna's jaw clenched. She would never beg. Not to him. Azuron simply shrugged, stepping aside to reveal the large, steaming bath. The water swirled, dark from the enchanted salts that would heal her wounds. "Suit yourself." Slowly, Sienna stepped toward the bath. Her hands trembled as she undid the ties of her ruined dress, letting it slip from her body, pooling at her feet. She lifted her chin, refusing to show weakness as she stepped into the water, even as his gaze burned into her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The tension crackled between them, thick as smoke. Then, Azuron reached for the clasp of his armor. Sienna's breath caught as she watched him shrug off his tunic, revealing honed muscle, battle-forged scars, and the faint, pulsing veins of dark magic crawling up his skin. He moved toward the bath, toward her. Sienna refused to look away, but her body betrayed her, her breathing uneven, her pulse wild. Azuron reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair away from her throat. His fingers lingered, hovering just over her pulse. His magic, his curse, should have burned her. Instead, it craved her. But he didn't touch her fully. No, he just watched, enjoyed the way her lips parted, the way her skin flushed despite the hot water. He was toying with her, and God's help her, she liked it. Sienna couldn't take it anymore. With a sharp intake of breath, she moved. Faster than thought, she closed the space between them, crashing her lips against his. It was raw, desperate, like she had been starving for him just as much as he had been starving for her. Azuron growled. The sound was pure possession, as he lifted her effortlessly, pressing her against the cool stone wall, his body pinning hers. His hands roamed, his mouth devoured, his fingers gripping her hips so tightly she knew she'd bruise. But then Azuron froze, his forehead pressed against hers, his chest heaving. "Tell me to stop, Sienna." His voice was strained, guttural. "Tell me now." She didn't. She pulled him closer. Azuron's last shred of control shattered, and this time, when he took her, it was with no hesitation, no restraint. Azuron did not stop. Sienna had given him her choice. She had no idea what that meant, because he was done holding back. He took her slowly at first, savoring, teasing, as if he had waited centuries for this moment. His fingers traced the bruises on her skin, his lips finding the scars that marked her suffering. His silent vow was made with every kiss, every touch. Never again would anyone take her from him. Never again would she know fear. Never again would she belong to anyone but him. But then, he felt it. The slow, insidious pull. His magic was draining her. His curse, the dark magic that bound them, was feeding on her life force, wrapping its unseen tendrils around her very soul. Sienna shivered. Her hands clenched against his skin, but she didn't push him away. No. She pulled him closer. Her body arched into his, surrendering completely, despite the danger, despite the prophecy. Azuron's control cracked. "Sienna." His voice was hoarse, a warning, a plea. "I'm hurting you." She shook her head wildly. "No, you're saving me." And then she kissed him. Not soft, not careful, fierce, consuming, endless. Azuron gave in. Whatever part of him had been clinging to restraint vanished. He lifted her, effortlessly, pressing her against the stone, his grip possessive, claiming absolute. His lips traced a path of fire down her throat, branding her with his devotion. Sienna moaned his name, and he nearly lost himself at the sound. His fingers intertwined with hers, pinning her hands above her head as his body moved against hers. Sparks of magic crackled through the air, the heat between them enough to set the ruins aflame. They had been fighting this for too long, and now there was no more waiting, no more barriers. She was his, and he was forever hers. When the storm of their passion finally settled, Sienna lay shaking in his arms. Azuron buried his face in her hair, breathing hard, his hands still clinging to her as if he feared she might disappear. But something was wrong. The moment their bodies separated, a violent shudder racked through Sienna. Azuron's heart stopped. His magic. It had taken too much. She blinked up at him, dazed, her lips parted, but her body was growing cold. Azuron panicked. His arms tightened around her, shaking her gently, his pulse hammering in his ears. No, 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 no. He had waited lifetimes for her. He would not lose her now. Sienna. Azuron's voice was hoarse, nearly breaking as he cupped her face. Her breathing was shallow, her skin hot beneath his touch. Not from their passion. Not from exhaustion. She was burning up. His heart slammed against his ribs. No, 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 stay with me. He scooped her up effortlessly, carrying her away from the still warm bath, her body limp in his arms. Droplets of water slid down her flushed skin, her damp hair sticking to her cheek. She barely stirred. He grabbed the softest cloth he could find, his movements both urgent and impossibly gentle. Azuron dried her himself, every inch of her, slowly, carefully. His hands worked methodically, but his mind was chaos. His fingers brushed over the bruises that marred her delicate skin, the ones he hadn't put there, the ones that came from her capture, her imprisonment, the ones that sent a fresh surge of white-hot rage coursing through his veins. His jaw clenched so tightly it ached. She let out a soft, pained sound, shifting slightly. Azuron stilled. She was barely conscious, her lashes fluttering, her lips slightly parted. His hand lingered on her bare thigh, his thumb tracing a slow, absent-minded path over her fevered skin. A muscle in his jaw twitched. He should move. He didn't. His gaze drifted over her, taking in every detail, the curve of her body, the rise and fall of her chest, the fragile beauty of her even now, in weakness. His. He forced himself to breathe, to refocus. Azuron reached for a fresh tunic, one of his. It would swallow her whole. Good. She would be covered in his scent, wrapped in him. Slowly, carefully, he slipped it over her head, guiding her weak arms through the sleeves. His fingers brushed over her collarbone, her stomach. A slow exhale left his lips. Even now, he wanted. But this wasn't about that. This was about her, keeping her safe. Keeping her warm, keeping her his. Azuron settled her beneath the thick furs of his bed. His body tensed as he watched her breathe, watched for any sign of pain, of distress, watched and wondered. Had they hurt her? Not just the bruises, the scars. Had they touched her? Had that filthy warlord put his hands where only Azuron was meant to? His grip on the bed frame tightened until the wood cracked. If she told him yes, he would hunt down every last one of them. He would burn their bones to ash. But she hadn't told him. She had said nothing. Azuron ran a hand down his face, exhausted, tormented. His gaze drifted back to her, to the fragile way she curled into the bed, to the sweat beading on her forehead. He reached for a damp cloth, pressing it gently to her fevered skin. She stirred, barely. Her lips parted, a whisper of sound, escaping. Azuron leaned closer. "Sienna?" A pause. And then, "You found me." His throat closed. Always. His voice was rough, a vow. "I will always find you." She sighed, a soft, broken sound, and then she slipped back into unconsciousness. Azuron didn't move the entire night. He stayed by her side, watching, waiting, worrying. And when the morning came, the rage inside him had never burned hotter. The morning after, she stirred. Azuron heard it before he saw it. The softest shift of fabric, the tiniest hitch in her breath. His head snapped up from where he sat beside her. "Sienna." Her lashes fluttered. Then, her eyes opened. The breath had been holding for hours finally released. She tried to move, a sharp wince tightening her features. Azuron was there in an instant, pressing a steady hand to her shoulder. "Don't," he said, voice low, controlled, but only just. "You're still weak." Sienna blinked at him, her gaze unfocused, hazy. She looked small, too small beneath the heavy furs, too fragile for what she had endured, too scarred. The moment. He sees it all. Azuron didn't know what made him do it. Maybe instinct, maybe some sick, self-destructive need to know. His hands, large, rough, calloused from war, moved before he could stop them. He brushed back her sleeve. There on her delicate skin were the bruises. Dark, ugly, fucking infuriating. His pulse roared in his ears, his stomach twisted violently. But he didn't speak. Not yet. He just kept looking. A cut on her collarbone, a scratch along her ribcage, faint marks along her wrists, like they had tied her up. Something inside Azuron snapped. "What did they do to you?" His voice was low. "Dangerous." Sienna flinched, his hands curled into fists. No, he didn't want that. He didn't want her to fear him. He forced himself to exhale. Slowly. But it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough to douse the inferno inside him. She didn't answer him, didn't even look at him. Instead, she turned her face away, staring at the fire crackling in the hearth. Azuron leaned in, his massive form caging her in, but his touch, when it came, was unbearably gentle. He brushed his knuckles down her cheek. "Sienna," he murmured. "Look at me." She did, and he wished she hadn't, because her eyes, those defiant, fire-filled eyes he adored so much, were hollow, distant, like she wasn't really here. His chest ached. He took a slow breath. "Did they hurt you?" She said nothing. His hands clenched at his sides. "Did they touch you?" Silence. Azuron's control shattered. In a blur, he surged forward, burying his face in the crook of her neck. His breathing was ragged, his entire body trembling, as he whispered, "Tell me, Sienna. Please." Still, she said nothing. Azuron stood so fast the chair scraped against the stone. His chest rose and fell erratically, his fingers twitching at his sides, aching for a sword. His entire body was screaming for violence. "I'm going to kill him." His voice was cold, lethal. Sienna's breath hitched. "Azuron." "No." He cut her off, his jaw tightening. "If you won't tell me what he did, then I'll make him tell me himself." and then I'll rip him apart for even breathing the same air as you." He turned. He was already halfway to the door when, "Wait!" A desperate cry, a rustle of sheets, and then warmth, her hands, small, trembling, clutching his wrist. Azuron froze. Her fingers tightened, holding on like he was her last tether to the world. "Don't go." His stomach twisted painfully. He looked down at her, so fragile, so broken, covered in bruises that weren't supposed to be there. Sienna swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. Nothing happened. Azuron's fingers curled into fists. "I don't believe you." She shook her head fiercely. "I swear it. The scars, they're from the dungeon. They never—" She exhaled shakily, searching his face. "All I need now is for you to stay." A muscle feathered in Azuron's jaw. Everything in him screamed to go, to burn that warlord's entire bloodline to the ground. But Sienna, Sienna, was looking at him like she would shatter if he left. So he stayed. Azuron lowered himself back onto the edge of the bed, slowly, stiffly, like a coiled predator fighting against its instincts. She let out a shaky breath, watching him. He didn't touch her, didn't speak, just sat there, unmoving, his powerful hands resting on his knees. Tense, waiting. Sienna swallowed, staring into the fire. Her mind was a storm, a war against itself. The warlord's words. Her. "Doubt? You think he loves you? You're a curse. He needs you. That's all. The moment you stop being useful, he will burn you too." Sienna squeezed her eyes shut. No, that wasn't true. Azuron wasn't. But then, why hadn't he denied it? Why had he never told her otherwise? What if she really was just a tool to him? A means to an end? She clenched her fists, the warlord's voice still slithering through her mind. She needed to know the truth before Azuron got to him, before it was too late. Azuron exhaled sharply, shattering the silence. "Sienna." Her heart lurched at the sound of her name. He turned to face her fully. His golden eyes, normally so sharp, so predatory, were raw. "You're hiding something from me." Her throat tightened. She forced a small, weak smile. "I just need time." Azuron watched her, long, unmoving. Then, finally, he exhaled through his nose. "Fine." But the way he said it, he didn't believe her, and he wasn't going to let this go. Sienna looked down, biting her lip. The warlord was going to die, by Azuron's hands unless she got to him first. Sienna lay beside him, her mind racing, thoughts circling like vultures over a dying thing. What had she done? Her fingers curled against the sheets, her own skin suddenly feeling foreign. She had slept with him, with Azuron, her captor, the man who had dragged her into this fate without her consent. The man who had bound her to him, claimed her as his without ever truly asking. She had fought him, resisted him, and yet, when it came down to it, she had given in. What is wrong with me? She squeezed her eyes shut. She should hate him, should resent everything he had done, every moment he had taken control of her life. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw was that moment. When he burst into the warlord's throne room, the raw fury on his face, the sheer rage that shook the ground. But through all of it, through all the devastation, her mind hadn't registered his anger first. It had registered his pain, his desperation, his vulnerability, because of her. Her throat felt tight. She hated that her heart ached for him, hated that, despite everything, a part of her trusted him. Even now, As he lay beside her, barely moving, his presence was solid, unwavering. He hadn't left, hadn't pushed her for more answers. Somewhere deep inside her, she knew Azuron would always find her. But does that mean I belong to him? She didn't know. She didn't know anything anymore. All she knew was that her body was exhausted, her thoughts a tangled mess. The room was bathed in the dim glow of dying candlelight, flickering shadows dancing across the stone walls. Azuron lay beside her, his breathing slow and steady, his features softened in sleep. Sienna should have looked away. She should have turned over and willed herself into unconsciousness. But she didn't. Instead, she watched him. She took in every sharp edge of his face, every scar that lined his skin. He was a warrior, a king, a conqueror. But like this, in sleep, he almost seemed human. Sienna traced the sharp line of Azuron's jaw with hesitant fingers. She shouldn't be doing this. She should pull away. But she didn't. Her touch was featherlight, just the ghost of her fingertips against his skin, brushing over the faint stubble along his cheek, memorizing him in the dim firelight. She didn't expect him to wake, but he did. His dark lashes fluttered, and suddenly, she was staring into those piercing eyes, now hooded with something unreadable, something dangerous. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved. The space between them was razor thin, yet still, he didn't touch her. He just watched her. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, waiting. A silent question. Are you sure? She swallowed, her pulse hammering. She should say no. She should turn away, bury herself beneath the covers, pretend this moment never happened. Her fingers trailed lower, along the column of his throat, then to his collarbone, feeling his heartbeat slamming against her fingertips. His breath hitched. In an instant, his hand shot up, catching hers. Sienna gasped, but he didn't pull her hand away. No. He brought it lower, pressing it against his bare chest, against the heat of his skin. You shouldn't touch me like this, little queen, he murmured, his voice like dark velvet, low and warning. But you won't stop me, she whispered back. A muscle ticked in his jaw. His grip on her wrist tightened just slightly. Say it, Sienna. His voice was hoarse, uneven. Say what? Say you want me. She hesitated. Because if she said it, there would be no turning back. This wasn't some stolen kiss. This was surrender. But she wasn't afraid, so she whispered it. I want you, Azuron snapped. He moved fast, but not rough, never rough. His lips crashed against hers and she felt it, all of it. His restraint, his hunger, his need to devour her, to prove to her that she was his. But he still gave her a choice, even as he leaned over her, pressing her into the sheets. His movements were slow, torturously slow, like he wanted her to feel every second of it, like he was afraid this was a dream. He kissed her like she was something holy, like he was praying to her, and she kissed him back like she was answering, hands tangled in hair, bodies shifting, breathless, desperate whispers. His breath was hot against her neck, but he didn't move. His body shuddered. He was trying to be strong, trying to resist. She smiled. He was failing. Slowly, she let her fingertips glide down his arm, tracing the hardened muscles, the veins beneath his bronze skin. Azuron let out a sharp breath. She felt it, his restraint snapping, his body tensing. She was driving him mad, and she wanted to. In an instant, he flipped her onto her back, pinning her beneath him. A gasp escaped her lips, but he caught it. His mouth was already on hers. He kissed slow, deep, relentless. His fingers, tangled in her hair, tugging just enough to make her gasp again. "You're playing with fire, little queen," he growled against her lips, his voice wrecked, hungry. "Then burn me," she whispered. There was no escape now. Their bodies fit like a battle well fought. A war waged between mouths, hands, skin, breath. A war neither wanted to win, because winning meant stopping, and stopping was never an option. After the chaos, the quiet Sienna lay boneless, her cheek pressed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, wild, frantic, like hers. He held her tight, too tight, like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "Sleep," he murmured against her hair. She wanted to, but her thoughts wouldn't let her, because now she knew. She wasn't just falling for her captor, she was drowning in him. The wager of truth and lies. Azuron stood in the dimly lit dungeon, his hands clenched into fists, his patience wearing thin. The warlord sat before him, bound in thick iron chains, but even in his restraints, he grinned, eyes gleaming with malice. "You're late," the warlord drawled, tilting his head. "Did I interrupt something?" Azuron's jaw tightened. His knuckles cracked as he flexed his hands, fighting the urge to snap the bastard's neck right then and there. The warlord laughed, his voice thick with mockery. "Let me guess. She's asleep in your bed now, isn't she? Worn out, satisfied?" Azuron lunged forward, gripping the man's throat, slamming him against the cold stone wall. "Choose your next words wisely," he warned, his voice a deadly whisper. But the warlord only smirked, eyes glinting with something far more dangerous than fear. "You want to know what I did to her, don't you?" he rasped through the chokehold. "Or should I say, what I didn't do?" Azuron's grip tightened. The warlord coughed, grinning despite the pressure. "I haven't gotten to touch her. Believe me, I wanted to. But you stormed in too soon." His lips curled cruelly. "She was begging, though." Azuron's blood ran cold. The warlord's smile widened, savoring the reaction. "Not for what you're thinking," he added with amusement. "She was begging to know the truth, to know why she was here, why I took her. And when I told her that I knew about your plan," he laughed, a sharp, vile sound. "She begged me to tell her. So I invited her to my celebration that night, a party that might have gone far better for me if you hadn't arrived so soon." Azuron felt something dark, something primal coil in his chest, but the warlord wasn't finished. "Tell me something," the warlord mused. "Does she know?" Azuron stilled. "Does she have any idea that you're manipulating her? That you've twisted her emotions with that necklace of yours?" His voice dripped with venom. "Or tell me, how else would someone in their right mind fall in love with their captor? With the man who burned her kingdom, disgraced her father, dragged her to his castle without so much as asking?" Azuron's hands shook. "She doesn't know, does she?" The warlord chuckled, dark and cruel. "She's falling for you, blindly, helplessly, and she has no idea that it isn't real." Azuron's heart pounded. He forced himself to stay silent. The warlord leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "The story of what you did to her is on every tongue. Do you think she'll still look at you the same once she knows the truth?" He tilted his head mockingly. "Have you told her that you're stealing from her? That every time she touches you, her power is being consumed by you?" Azuron flinched. "Ah," the warlord breathed. "She really doesn't know." The words felt like a dagger to his gut. "Does she even feel it?" the warlord mused. "The slow pull of her power draining into you? Or is she too naive? Too lost in you to realize she's being used?" Azuron snapped. He slammed the warlord back against the wall, his vision burning red. "You know nothing," he hissed. The warlord laughed, even as blood dripped from his split lip. "Oh, but I do. And deep down so do you." Azuron's breathing was ragged. His thoughts, a storm, a wildfire, a curse. She won't be able to control. "It," he growled, his voice laced with something he refused to name. "Her power is too much for her," the warlord sneered. "Or maybe it's too much for you." Above them, in the castle halls, Sienna's breath came shallow as she pressed herself against the cold stone walls. She had woken up to an empty bed, and somehow she knew where he had gone. So she followed. Now, standing just outside the dungeon corridor, hidden in the shadows, she clutched the doorway, her heart slamming against her ribs, because she had heard everything, every single word. And the worst part? She didn't know what to believe. Her pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out every rational thought. The air felt too thick, pressing down on her, suffocating her. Her nails dug into her palms as she fought to keep her breathing steady. Was it true? Had he... No. No. Her mind rejected it, but the doubt had already taken root, twisting, spreading, like poison through her veins. Had she truly fallen for the man who had been using her all along? Sienna's body felt like it had turned to ice. Her fingers trembled as they pressed against the cold stone, her breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. She had come here for answers, to look the warlord in the eye and demand the truth about what he had said back in the throne room. What did he mean when he said she was a risk to Azuron's life? That the whole world would be ruined because of her? But now she had heard more than she ever would have asked for. Azuron's voice was a low, growled warning. "You better stop talking shit. She won't be able to control it. Her power is too much for her. She is not strong enough. She didn't even know she had powers. But when I have these powers, then I can protect her and my kingdom." The words struck her like a blade to the chest. Her power. Her power. She didn't even know she had any. And yet, Azuron, he had known. He had always known. She pressed a hand to her stomach, nausea curling deep inside her. He was using her. It felt like the walls were closing in on her, like the air had grown too thick to breathe. Her thoughts raced, tangled and desperate. Is that why he wanted me to stay? Is that why he saved me? Is that why he touched me like that? Looked at me like I meant something? Sienna swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay silent, forcing herself not to run. Not yet. Because she had to hear it all. Because if she left now, she would always wonder. And she wasn't sure what would be worse, hearing the rest of the truth, or living in the torment of never knowing.